Usage du présent du subjonctif. Now that we have practiced a little bit with the conjugation of the présent du subjonctif, we are now going to talk about how to use it. And this can be a little bit complicated, so just be sure to take the notes and we will go step by step.
The présent du subjonctif is used in the second clause of a two-clause sentence. Now, a clause is a subject and a verb pair. So anytime you have a subject followed by a verb, it forms a clause. And you've already worked with some two-clause sentences. When you say something like, j'aime nager parce que c'est amusant, the first clause is before the parce que, I like to swim. The second clause is after, because it's fun. So again, we have two subject and verb pairs. I like and it is. So those are two-clause sentences. Sometimes you do two-clause sentences using and or then, but we are using two-clause sentences now using que, which means that. So the présent du subjonctif is used in the second clause always. So you always have to have two clauses, and the présent du subjonctif is going to be in that second clause. The présent du subjonctif is used in the second clause when the first clause indicates one of the following: necessity, desire, doubt, emotion, or opinion. So we are specifically going to talk with impersonal expressions, and there are other times we use the subjunctive. We're going to do that in our next homework. But for now, we're just going to use these impersonal expressions. Impersonal expressions are the ones that start with it is instead of saying that a particular person did the action. So we're going to start with necessity and desire. And really, the two can go hand in hand, especially with impersonal expressions. So we are going to kind of combine these for this reason. When you use these expressions, you are going to follow them with the présent du subjonctif. Il est essentiel que. It is essential that. Il est important que. It is important that. Il est urgent que. It is urgent that. Il est utile que. Now, utile is not a word we have learned often in class, and it means useful. So, il est utile que means it is useful that. Il est indispensable que. It is indispensable that, meaning really super important. Then we have some impersonal expressions that express doubt. So these are also going to be followed by the présent du subjonctif. Il est douteux que. It is doubtful that. Il est exclu que. It is out of the question that. Il est peu probable que. It is not probable that. So again, these expressions indicate doubt. Doubtful, out of the question, not probable. So probably not going to happen. Doubt. And I think, also expressing doubt, a few more. Il n'est pas certain que. It is not certain that. Il n'est pas sûr que. It is not sure that. Il n'est pas évident que. It is not evident that. Il n'est pas clair que. It is not clear that. Il n'est pas exact que. Okay. It is not correct that. So again, these are negative expressions. The ones on the previous slide were affirmative. So when you put these in the negative, then they express doubt. If they are affirmative, then it's not doubtful anymore, right? I can say, if I say it is certain that, well, that's not doubt. But if I make it negative, il n'est pas certain, then it's doubtful. Il n'est pas vrai que. It is not true that. The following impersonal expressions express emotion and are followed by the présent du subjonctif. Il est étonnant que. It is surprising that. Il est énervant que. It is annoying that. Il est curieux que. It is curious that. And really, you could put almost any emotion adjective. It is happy that. It is sad that. It is you know, pretty much any emotion adjective where you could put it is makes sense here. And then it's going to express emotion and be followed by the présent du subjonctif. The following impersonal expressions express opinion and are followed by the présent du subjonctif. Il est possible que, it is possible that. Il est impossible que, it is impossible that. Il est rare que, it is not often that. Il est naturel que, it is natural that. Il est juste que, it is right that. So again, when we start to put our emotions and our feelings, this is how I believe. And again, opinion and emotion can go a little bit hand in hand. Sometimes it's hard to figure out what's opinion and what's emotion, but it's okay because they both indicate the subjunctive. So if you're sure that it's opinion, either one, opinion or emotion, no matter how you label it, you're going to end up with the subjunctive following that expression. So here are some examples. So now I've taken some similar examples and all I've done is I've changed il faut que, il est nécessaire que, meaning it is necessary that, to one of the new expressions. So it is essential that I do my homework. Il est essentiel que je fasse mes devoirs. It is natural that she be good. Il est naturel qu'elle soit gentille. It is not certain that we go. Il n'est pas certain que nous y allions. It is surprising that the girls be able to be quiet. Il est étonnant que les filles puissent être silentes. So we're going to do more practice. You've practiced tonight on conjugamos with conjugation, and then we will be using these activities, these expressions in our project so that you can get some practice with using these particular expressions that express necessity, desire, doubt, opinion, and emotion. Remember that the présent du subjonctif is always the second clause in a two-clause sentence. So it's always in a sentence with two clauses, and the subjonctif is always in the second clause. Only in sentences that meet the following conditions. The sentence has to have two clauses, and each clause has to have two different subjects. So, for example, if je is in the first clause, then I can't use je in the second clause. It has to be a different subject. All of the impersonal expressions meet this requirement because the il in il est important, il est nécessaire, il est essentiel, etc., that il is a general it. It's not referring to a specific person. So it really doesn't matter who is the second part of the sentence because it's never going to be that general it. But when you're starting to talk about certain people, and we're going to talk about how to do that now, then you have to be sure that your sentence has two different subjects in each clause. The clauses have to be connected by que. And again, this is followed by those impersonal expressions because you have il est important que, il est essentiel que, il est douteux que. That's why all of those sentences have que. So you have to have two clauses, they have to have different subjects, and the clauses are connected by que. The first clause has to indicate one of the things that we talked about for our impersonal expressions: necessity, desire, doubt, emotion, opinion. So your first clause has to be one of those things, and then if you have two clauses with two different subjects connected by que, then you're going to be sure to use the présent du subjonctif in the second clause. So let's talk about some of the example verbs that you could use. So the following verbs express necessity or desire. Commander, to order. Now we use this, we've used this in the past for food, like to order something in a restaurant. That's not the sense we're talking about here. Here we are talking about how to do the ordering, like I order you to do this, I command you to do this. Demander, to ask. Désirer, to desire. Exiger, to demand. This one's a really good one to know. We use it a lot. I demand that you do something. Permettre, to allow. remembering that this is going to be conjugated like mettre because it has a prefix. Préférer, to prefer. Don't forget that préférer is an accent change. So when you are conjugating this one, you have to worry about whether or not to change that accent. The following verbs also express necessity or desire. There were just too many to put on one page. We have recommander, to recommend, souhaiter, to wish, suggérer, to suggest, vouloir, to want, and suggérer is another one that works like préférer. So you are going to have the accent change in certain forms. Also remember that vouloir is irregular. Okay, that's je veux, tu veux, etc. To want. The following verb expresses doubt. This one is probably pretty obvious, but when you want to express doubt and say, well, I doubt that something is true, you use the verb douter. The following verbs express emotion. Adorer, to love. Aimer, to like. When we're talking about things, sometimes aimer is translated as to love, but not in this context because we're generally going to be saying, I like that something happens, or I love using adorer, that something happens. Apprécier, to appreciate. Avoir honte, to be ashamed, remembering that avoir is the one we are going to conjugate here. We're going to leave honte the same. Avoir peur, to be afraid, same thing. Conjugate avoir, leave peur the same. Détester, to detest or hate. Être plus emotion. So anytime you want to say like, I am angry, I am sad, I am sorry, all of those would be emotions and would be followed by que and the subjunctive if you're talking about a different subject. Regretter, to regret. The following verbs express opinion. Refuser, to refuse. Supposer, to suppose. There are some others as well, but those are the big ones. The following verbs indicate the subjunctive only in the negative, and we had some impersonal expressions that were like that as well. And this is simply because in the negative, these often express doubt, whereas in the affirmative, they do not. So croire, to believe, remembering that croire is conjugated like voir when we conjugate. Dire, to say. Espérer, to hope. Espérer is another one where the accent changes when necessary. Penser, to think. Savoir, to know. Trouver, to find. So again, in the affirmative, these are all factual types of expressions, but in the negative, they become doubtful, and that is why we would use the subjunctive with them. There are also some conjunctions that automatically indicate the subjunctive. Afin que, so that. Bien que, although. De façon que, in such a way that. Jusqu'à ce que, until. Now you've seen jusqu'à, meaning until, but usually you've said things like jusqu'à la classe or jusqu'à 2 heures. This, you have to use this ce que when you're going to follow it with a subject and a verb. So if you want to say until something happens, jusqu'à ce que is what you're going to use. Pour que, so that. Quoique, even though. So here are some examples, and I know we went through all those verbs and you're like, okay, well, how do I actually use them? So here are some examples. If we say in English, my mom wants me to do my homework, in French, that's going to be a 2-clause sentence that uses the subjunctive. So you have my mom wants, there's your first clause, and me to do my homework is your second clause. And again, we use the infinitive in English for this, but in French, you're going to use the subjunctive. So you end up with ma maman veut que je fasse mes devoirs. So again, ma maman veut, that's clause 1. Je fasse mes devoirs is clause 2. They're connected by que. And this verb is vouloir, which is a verb of desire in the first clause. So that indicates that I'm going to use the subjonctif in the second clause. I doubt that we can go to the beach. Je doute que nous puissions aller à la plage. There's clause 1, je doute. Nous puissions aller à la plage is clause 2. We have different subjects because here's je and here's nous. They're connected by que, and this expression is doubt, so the verb will be in the subjunctive. We try, even though it's hard. All right. So this one is one that uses a conjunction. Nous essayons bien que ce soit difficile. Because we have bien que, that is going to indicate the subjunctive here. Nous essayons bien que ce soit difficile. You do still have to have the two different subjects, which we have here. Marie doesn't think you know French. Marie ne pense pas que tu saches le français. So here we have two clauses, Marie ne pense pas and tu saches le français. There's 1 and 2. Then we have two different subjects because we have Marie and we have tu. They're connected by que, and this is in the negative. Ne pense pas. Remember, penser is one of the ones that only uses the subjunctive. It's in the negative. It is in the negative, so it indicates some doubt. Therefore, it is going to indicate the subjunctif in the second clause. I hope this helps. Go do conjuguemos so you can practice your conjugation some more, and we will practice these sentences in class.